There are moments in life when a single voice can awaken something eternal within us. It may come from a teacher, a stranger, or even from the quiet echo of our own heart. But once heard, it never fades. Before we speak of wisdom, we must speak of those who plant its seeds, the ones who teach not for glory, but for the light they leave behind in others. For wisdom does not begin in great halls or libraries, but beneath quiet trees, in classrooms filled with dreams, and in the patient silence of those who choose to listen rather than command. And so, before we journey into the realm of great thinkers and the art of silence, let us return once more to a small high school in California, where an old teacher waited beneath a maple tree, and where one lost boy would learn that even the smallest spark of kindness can become a flame that lights the world. Autumn had come early to California that year. The air was cool, tinged with the faint sweetness of maple leaves turning gold. At Jefferson High School, the last bell of the day echoed across the courtyard. Students poured out in clusters, laughing, running, living in that brief and brilliant space between childhood and adulthood. Under the old maple tree near the edge of the campus sat Mr. Raymond, the school's longtime English teacher. He was in his 60s now. His once dark hair had turned silver. His hands bore the soft wrinkles of time, and his voice, though quieter than before, still carried the warmth of an open fire. On his lap lay a leather notebook, old, frayed, and heavy with memories. Inside were names written in careful, slanted handwriting. Alex, born to lead, just needs patience. Emma, cries too easily, loves too deeply. Lucas, smart but scared to try. And then on the last page, one name stood alone, Daniel. Next to it, only two words, still waiting. Daniel had been one of Mr. Raymond's last students before retirement. He was 17, tall, quiet, and restless. His eyes always seemed to carry something heavy, like he'd seen more than a boy his age should. He lived in a small apartment with his father, an unemployed mechanic who drank too much and spoke too little. His mother had left when he was 10. Since then, Daniel had grown used to silence, the kind that pressed on you until you forgot what laughter sounded like. At school, he was often late. His grades were average at best. But when he wrote, something changed. His words carried a raw honesty that made people stop and think. When asked to write an essay about the American dream, Daniel turned in a story about a boy who wanted to use his voice to change the world, but couldn't find anyone who wanted to listen. When Mr. Raymond read it, he didn't mark a single correction. He simply wrote one line at the bottom, "Never let the world silence your voice." From that day on, Daniel began to stay after class, sometimes to talk, sometimes just to sit quietly while the teacher graded papers. Mr. Raymond never pried, never judged. He simply listened. For the first time in years, Daniel felt seen. Mr. Raymond had a way of teaching that didn't feel like teaching. He told stories instead of lectures, asked questions instead of giving answers. He believed that literature wasn't about words. It was about understanding hearts. "Don't memorize the poem," he once said to Daniel. "Feel it. If it doesn't move you, you're not reading it right." Daniel smiled at that. He'd never met an adult who talked like that. Most people told him what to do. Mr. Raymond told him to feel. As the months passed, Daniel began to draw again. Sketches of people, of the city, of faces lost in thought. He dreamed of becoming an artist, though he told no one. One afternoon, when Raymond found him sketching by the window, he asked, "What are you drawing, Daniel?" "Light," the boy said, "but it never looks real." "That's okay," Mr. Raymond smiled. "Light doesn't have to look real. It just has to feel real." Daniel laughed softly. For a fleeting moment, the shadows around him lifted. But peace never lasts long in a world that doesn't understand dreamers. In January, the school was thrown into chaos. Someone had spray-painted graffiti across the library wall. A massive mural showing a man carrying a boy across a river. Above it were the words, "The ones who carry us never get remembered." The principal was furious. "Vandalism," he shouted. "Find the student who did this." It didn't take long. Daniel had been seen near the library that morning. At the disciplinary hearing, every teacher agreed on suspension, except one. Mr. Raymond stood up and said, "That boy didn't vandalize our school. He told a story, in the only way he knew how." The room fell silent. Daniel looked up, his eyes wide, his throat tight. It was the first time anyone had defended him. He wasn't expelled, only suspended for a week. But before he left, he stopped by Mr. Raymond's class. "You shouldn't have done that," he muttered. "Why not?" the teacher asked. "Because the world doesn't care what people like me have to say." Then Daniel walked away, leaving behind a crumpled note on the desk. "Maybe one day I'll write again." He never came back. Years passed. Students graduated, buildings changed, but the old maple tree and Mr. Raymond remained, until one autumn afternoon when a letter arrived in the school mail. No return address, only a simple line on the envelope, for Mr. Raymond. Inside was a plane ticket to New York and an invitation card, Voices of the Unheard, an art exhibition by Daniel Harper. Below it, written in a hand Mr. Raymond still recognized, "For the man who taught me to never stop speaking." He smiled for the first time in months. The gallery in Brooklyn was packed with people. Every wall was filled with paintings, bold, haunting, and heartbreakingly human. Children in alleyways, mothers with tired eyes, men staring at city lights through rain-streaked windows. At the center was a single enormous painting, a man carrying a boy across a river, and beneath it, a line of text, "The ones who carried us deserve to rest." Mr. Raymond stood frozen, tears welling in his eyes. Then he heard a familiar voice behind him. "I didn't think you'd come." He turned. Daniel stood there, taller now, his hands stained with paint, his eyes filled with the same fire he'd seen years ago. "How could I not?" Mr. Raymond whispered. "You finally found your voice." "No, sir," Daniel said softly. "You gave it to me." They hugged, surrounded by strangers, yet in that moment it felt like the world had paused just for them. A year later, Jefferson High invited Daniel to speak during Inspiration Week. Hundreds of students gathered in the auditorium, waiting to hear from the famous artist who'd once been one of them. Daniel stepped up to the microphone, his voice calm but full of emotion. "I used to sit where you're sitting," he began. "I thought I was a failure. I thought my life didn't matter. But then, a teacher believed in me when no one else did." He glanced down at the front row. There sat Mr. Raymond, older, frailer, but smiling proudly. "A great teacher doesn't just teach lessons," Daniel said, voice trembling. "He teaches people how to believe in themselves. If not for Mr. Raymond, there would be no artist named Daniel Harper today." The auditorium erupted in applause. Mr. Raymond lowered his head, hiding the tears glistening in his eyes. In his old notebook, he wrote one final note beside Daniel's name, "The boy who became light." Not long after, Daniel received a call from California. Mr. Raymond had fallen ill. His heart was failing. Daniel flew back immediately. When he entered the hospital room, the old teacher smiled faintly. On the nightstand sat the same painting, the man carrying the boy across the river. "There you are," Mr. Raymond said weakly. "You made it." "Always, sir," Daniel whispered. "You saved me when no one else cared." The teacher reached out, his hand trembling, and clasped Daniel's. "Listen to me, son," he said, voice barely audible. "A great teacher doesn't teach minds, he teaches hearts." Daniel nodded, tears falling onto their joined hands. That night, Mr. Raymond passed away peacefully, his final breath leaving behind a silence filled with gratitude and love. A year later, Daniel opened a new art exhibition in New York titled "The Man in the Mirror." At its center hung a portrait of Mr. Raymond, painted under the red maple tree, sunlight filtering through the leaves, his eyes full of warmth. Below the painting were the words, "He taught me to see the light inside me." All proceeds from the exhibition were donated to a new scholarship fund, the Raymond's Heart Foundation, supporting underprivileged students who dream of pursuing the arts. During the opening speech, Daniel said, "My teacher taught me that wisdom isn't in words, it's in kindness. He never lectured, he listened. He didn't tell me who to be, he helped me find it myself." The crowd stood in silence. Through the glass ceiling above, sunlight spilled across the painting, and for a brief moment, it seemed like Mr. Raymond was smiling again. When autumn returned to California, Daniel went back to Jefferson High. The maple tree still stood there, older, taller, but still beautiful. He sat down beneath its branches, opened Mr. Raymond's old notebook, and found one final line written at the very end. "If you can't find the light, be the light." He closed the notebook, took out a canvas, and began to paint. This time, not with sorrow, but with peace. He painted the maple tree, the soft sunlight, the empty bench, and on that bench, he painted Mr. Raymond, sitting quietly, smiling, watching his students walk into the future. As he finished, Daniel whispered, "You can rest now, sir." I'll carry the light from here." A gust of wind blew through the branches, scattering golden leaves around him. For a moment, the sunlight flickered across the painting, and in that shimmer, it felt as though the teacher was still there, smiling beneath the maple tree. A good teacher teaches with words. A great teacher teaches with heart. The wise see one thing and understand 10. And if you want to go far, you must go together with those who once believed in you, even before you believed in yourself.